Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're on chapter 29, verse 5. So Yaakov has been sent to the house of Lavan. So he goes to the general area, and now he needs to find Lavan. So he comes across these shepherds, who gathered together to take the rock off of the well. We spoke about this last time. And now in verse 5, Vayomer Lahem, and he says to them, Haidatem es Lavan ben Nachor. Do you know Lavan, the son of Nachor? Vayomru Yodanu. And they say, yeah, we know him. Okay, just a technical question. Who was Lavan's father? Lavan's father was Besuel. We saw that earlier in the Chumash, right? When Eliezer comes, he meets Lavan and Besuel. So why are we referring to him as the son of Nachor? Nachor was his grandfather. So why is he being referred to as the son of Nachor? Ramban on Pasuk Hey, Haidatemes Lavan ben Nachor, Haya Nikar v'Yadua b'Shem Avi Aviv, Ki Nichbad Me Aviv v'Rosh Beis Avosam. The bottom line is Nachor was a prominent personage. He was of more acclaim than Besuel. And so therefore, like, everybody was sort of known by being part of Nachor's family. So that's what he meant. He didn't literally mean that Lavan is Nachor's son. It just means from Nachor's family. V'yitaching shehaya Besuel adam pachus mala. It's possible Besuel was a real good for nothing. V'lo yirtze Lavan sheyichasu oso anashim rak la'avi aviv. It could be that Lavan did not want to be known as Besuel's son. So, when he would introduce himself, as being Nachor's grandson. Kichein matzanu vayan Lavan uvsuel. So this is just an interesting point. It says Lavan when Eliezer comes. It says Lavan when he kind of makes his pitch to the family to marry Rivka. It says Lavan's responding before it says Besuel is responding. So Rashi over there, if I remember correctly, brings down that it shows that Lavan didn't have so much derech eretz for his father. The Ramban is saying something not really at odds with it, just slightly a different point, that it could be that Lavan wasn't so interested in sort of subjugating himself to his father. He wasn't proud of being his father's son. So maybe that's the story. And then the Ramban says, Ulai haya kol ze l'malas Avraham. Maybe it wasn't much about Besuel. Maybe it wasn't even that much about Nachor. Maybe it was the fact that Nachor is the brother of this world-famous Avraham. So, you sort of associate yourself more with famous people. So Nachor was closer to Avraham and the family tree than Besuel was. So all interesting ideas to think about. Gives a little more of a portrait a little bit. Verse 9. We read this the other day. Odenu midaber imam. So Yaakov is still speaking to the shepherds. V'Rachel ba'a imatzon asher lavia. And lo and behold, Rachel shows up with the sheep, with her father's sheep. Kiro ahi, because she was a shepherd. That last phrase is a little bit extraneous. I mean, right? She came with the sheep. So, what do you call a person who guides sheep around? Probably a shepherd, Pasuk tests. V'tam ki ro'ahi, the meaning of the phrase she was a shepherd, lahagid, this teaches, ki ein l'tzon Lavan roa acher zulasa. She was the only person who dealt with Lavan's sheep. That's what we're saying. She was the only one who interacted with them. Ki lo levada masar avihu ha'eder. It was to her alone. V'i levada ro'o sam kol hayamim. Lo selech bohem achosa leah achosa klal. Now, this is of course an interesting statement because Rachel has a sister, right? So where's Leah in all of this? So we're saying that Rachel's the only one who ever dealt with the sheep and not Leah. What happens when Moshe flees to Midian and he comes across a whole issue with shepherds giving young ladies a hard time? Because Tzipporah and her sisters went to take care of Yisro's sheep. So why not here? Is it not Rachel and Leah taking care of the sheep? Says Ramban, V'ulai bavur kienei Leah rakos haya shemesh mazikla. We'll find out soon that Rachel is described as being very beautiful, and Leah is described as having soft eyes fragilized, sensitized, something like that. Normally, Einei Leia Rakos is understood to be that her eyes weren't like attractive or whatever it is, or maybe she had cried a lot. But maybe, says the Ramban, it means that she had great sensitivity to the sun. And so therefore, it didn't make sense for her to go outside much. So Rachel had to take care of the sheep. Leah was older. Leah could attract the desires of men more than her younger sister could. So maybe her father was concerned about that. Aval Yisro, so now why isn't Yisro worried about that? Yisro was a prominent individual in Midian. And people would be afraid to cause his daughters, to do too much with his daughters, though they weren't afraid to cause his daughters problems. That's what the story with Moshe involves. But in any event, maybe Lavan had a greater sense of sensitivity that he didn't want his daughter to be among the men. Lavan, after all, came from a good mishpacha. He came from Avram's family. So maybe he did have a greater sensitivity than Yisro. And Rachel was young, so Lavan wasn't worried about Rachel. So, two answers so far. Where is Leah? Why isn't Leah out with the sheep? So one possibility is that maybe what it means that Leah's eyes were soft is that she was very sensitive to the sun. So it would be detrimental to her health for her to be regularly outside with the sheep. The other possibility is that Lavan was worried that someone of a lady of Leah's age could attract men in a negative way. Those are the two possibilities the Ramban says. Now, on this last point, he continues, V'zet inyan vayishak Yaakov l'Rachel. That's what it means when it says Yaakov kissed Rachel. That's what's going to happen in a moment. So you know why he kissed Rachel? Because she was a little girl. She was a young girl. So it wasn't like an affectionate, maybe it was affectionate kiss, but it wasn't a romantic kiss. So that's what he says. Oh, who could Rabbi Avram, Kidashika Balamed Enenu Bepeh. Raknashak Osa Al Rosho Al Ksefa. Also an interesting thing, the Ibn Ezra says Yaakov kissed to Rachel. Rachel, to Rachel. We would have assumed it would have said something like Vayishak Yaakov es Rachel. Le Rachel, like he kissed at her. It's a little bit, does not sound so romantic. Would you say someone kisses at someone? So the Ibn Ezra says what that means is like he kissed her on the head or he kissed her on the shoulder or something. In other words, again, not a romantic kiss, just a sign of affection. All interesting things. Now let's go on to verse 15. So, lo and behold, Rachel comes out. Yaakov sees her. Yaakov is very interested in her. She brings Yaakov back to the house. Yaakov introduces himself to Lavan. Lavan greets him warmly. And now, verse 14, Vayomer lo Lavan achatzmi of Sariata. Lavan says, "You're my bones, you're my flesh." Vayeshev imo chodesh yamim. And he lived with him. Yaakov lives in Lavan's home for a month. Now, verse 15, Vayomer Lavan liYaakov. Lavan says to Yaakov, Hachi achi ata. So here it is, you're my brother. Vavadatani chinam. Just because you're my brother, you'll work for me for free. Hagidali ma maskrutecha. Tell me what your pay should be. Okay, now this feels like we missed the step. Where did we see that? Where did it say that Yaakov was doing any work for Lavan? It says that Lavan takes in Yaakov. It's a month later. Lavan now says to Yaakov, it can't be that you're working for me for free. I don't know. What's he doing for him? Did it say? Ramban on Pasuk Tesvav. Hachi ata vavadatani lo sipra akasav shaya Yaakov ovido so. The Pasuk has not indicated that Yaakov was working for him. Excuse me, as tzon Lavan achi imo. So when Yaakov meets Rachel out in the field, it says that he gave the sheep to drink. In other words, he took care of it. He removed the rock from the well on his own, as we spoke about the other day, and he gave the sheep to drink. So the Ramban says maybe that's the new status quo. Lo yotzat son miyado. So maybe from that point, he didn't stop worrying about the sheep. Kibiros was Rachel Kiroa. He sees that Rachel is the one responsible for the sheep. Chomal aleha shalosashuv liros tzonot. He doesn't want his wife to be have to deal with the sheep. I want to tell you something. Once Tara and I got serious, I told her, I never want you to give the sheep water again. And then she hasn't given the sheep water once since we got married. But maybe that's what it means. So then Yaakov just started taking over the sheep from that point. And in his affection for Rachel, he took care of the sheep. So it's been happening all this time, and now, not bad, but now, Scott, but now, Lavan says to him, okay, it's really sweet that you're taking care of the sheep all this time, but enough is enough. Ve'efsher od lomar ki Lavan diber b'orma. But another possibility, says the Ramban, is Lavan is speaking in kind of a cunning way. Amar lo mitchila ki atzmo v'saro. The first thing he says to Yaakov when Yaakov first comes, listen, you're my mishpacha, you're my flesh and blood. V'yachmal alav kasher yachmal adam al atzmo v'yabsaro, and I'm going to treat you accordingly. I'm going to take care of you. That's a very generous offer. And you know what? Yaakov took him up on it. V'kasher ra'a Yaakov misakev sham. So now he sees it's been a month and he's still here. Misparnes me'asher l'lavan, and he's eating breakfast in the house, he's eating lunch in the house, etc. Amar lo hachi achi atav avadatani chinam. It shouldn't be that you work for me for free. Ki yodati ki me'ata tavodosi. So Lavan says to Yaakov, I know you want to start working for me. Ki ish musarata, you're a menschlich person. You don't want to just mutra off me forever. I know that. I know that about you. I know you want to work for me. So I appreciate that you want to work for me, but I don't want you to work for me for free. So I know you want to work for me. I'm sure you do. I don't want it to be that I'm mooching off of you. So let's figure out what the salary should be, what the compensation should be, which is a pretty smooth, because Yaakov has an offer to work for him. And so basically, Oz, Hikir Yaakov Dato. So then that was a pretty clear way to convey to Yaakov Lavan's thought process. So now, okay, he wants me to work for him. So Yaakov goes, okay, I'll work for 7 years. It's an interesting thing to think about. So what did he do for him? What did he do? So the Rambam says it's just logical to say he took care of the sheep. I mean, that's an asset that Lavan has. Obviously, we'll see later in the story that there'll be a lot of discussion about the sheep one way or the other. So again, the two possibilities are that Yaakov really has been taking care of the sheep all this time, and that's what Lavan is following up on. And the other possibility is Lavan's following up on nothing. This is just Lavan's way of hinting to Yaakov. It's time to get to work. Okay, let's go on now to verse 31. Fast forward in the story. We know the basic way the story goes. Yaakov ends up marrying both sisters because he married Leah first, thinking it was Rachel, and then he ultimately marries Rachel. And in verse 30, we say, Vayavo gamo Rachel, Vayahav gamas Rachel milaya. Yaakov came to Rachel, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. And now we have in verse 31, Vayar Hashem ki snua Leah. Hashem saw that Leah was hated. Vayiftachas Rachma, he opened her womb. Rachel akara, and Rachel was still barren. This, of course, raises the eyebrows. What exactly does it mean that Yaakov hates Leah? What does that mean? It's a strong thing to say. We see God's kindness for Leah, but what does it mean that Yaakov hates Leah? So we will talk about that more tomorrow, God willing. We will meet tomorrow, God willing. Just to sum up what we spoke about today, we spoke about the Ramban regarding why Lavan is known as the son of Nachor when really Nachor was his grandfather. We spoke about why Rachel is with the sheep and not Leah. And we also spoke about what exactly does Lavan mean when he says, how could you be working for me for free when we haven't seen that he's been working for him?